Oh, welcome, Shawna, to the podcast. I am so grateful that you're here.
Oh, I am so happy. Thanks. Thank you for inviting me. Really,
Yeah.
it's wonderful to be here.
One of the reasons it's so special for me is that before we get into introducing you,
Mm.
is that I can't remember when we started working together. It's been at least a decade that I've been your client.
I think
And
so.
yeah, at least. And one of the things that has been so helpful for me in working with you is that I can come with anything personal, whatever is going on, whether it's relationship, sexuality, my work, and then, oh yeah, that's the other piece. Or then I can come with my business. So it's like the combination of how you work with my soul, my personality, my wounds, my business, my potential, my blind spots. It's hard. It's been hard for me to find someone that can actually collate all of that in one space and be able to go that multidimensionally, which is what my system needs. And so I'm really grateful for that. And I'm thinking of this one particular example that still, this was 2015. So, and we'd been working together for a while. I came to you to talk about my business. And I guess this is the other part that I love about working with you is that I never know what I'm going to get when you're bringing things through, and so you don't either.
Well,
I know that's the beauty of what an open channel you are. But I came to talk about my business, and I don't remember your exact words, but you said to me, "Until you forgive your father, your business will not take roots the way that you're wanting it to." And I was like, "Say what?" It was
I know.
because at that point I hadn't seen my biological dad 20 plus year, 25 plus years maybe. And because of that, and because of the trust that I had built with you and the energy and the clarity in which you bring information through, I was on a plane month or 2 months later in front of my biological father for the first time in 20 something years, after he had had a few strokes and wasn't able to have speech as well. So I was less scared of him. And I was able to like sit and put my hand on his heart and just whisper, "I forgive you. Please forgive me." And I would have never, to my knowledge, I can't imagine, considered doing that, much less done it. But there was something so pure about the way you brought it in that I was like, okay. And it wasn't like I've given all my authority away to you. It's that I just felt the truth of that. So
That's
I,
beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to just turn it over to you. So you have a business called Conscious Enterprise, and I want you to just share a little bit about you and your work. And we'll go into, towards the end of the show for listeners, we're going to go into more of your niche and who you really love to work with, but just to open up about you and your work.
Well, I want to start with why that name,
Yeah.
because the conscious enterprise came to me spontaneously because when I did start to do this work and pay attention to what I was doing and realizing, okay, I can see energy move, I can see all kinds of flavors and colors of it. And when I would talk to someone and share something, whether it was channeled or whether it was me scanning their field and saying, oh, I see this, I see. The minute I brought consciousness to something, by speaking it out loud, immediately I watched the energy move.
Hmm.
It was like, oh, that consciousness brought something to the surface. That bringing consciousness actually is the beginning of creating change.
Mm.
And I just thought, wow, um, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was clear that what I felt I was doing was my work is seeing what I see, hearing what I hear, bringing consciousness to it, to me, which is like handing it to the other person and saying, here it is. This is
Yeah.
for you. And
Yeah.
then it's not me that switched their energy and saw something come to a light and alive in them rather than be this dark coagulate kind of dark looking shadow. It was when I handed it to them through the speaking of it and bringing it into the conscious self,
Mm-hmm.
they then lit up. It's like,
Mm.
oh. And even if it brought a feeling of, even if they would respond with, angst, or that like, yes, that was very painful for me, or yes, or I didn't know that was there. And is that a problem or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Um, they were just in there. I watched them rearrange things.
Wow.
It's like, my gosh.
Wow.
So that's why I felt like, okay, my job is to bring the consciousness
Mm-hmm.
to the surface, to light.
Mm.
How I got there is a whole other story.
Mm-hmm.
But it was around 2006, 7, I think, when I had gone through this, moved from Kentucky, where I was born, to New York City. I found my way, and I should say stumbled my way into working in the film industry, in the marketing side of it. I had that very busy, very big career. But then at, I don't remember how many years into it was, very big, exciting, busy, exhausting work. My father died, and I was very attached to him in many ways. And I also modeled myself after him. But his sudden death at a young age, his sudden death, which nobody expected, it it just rocked my world. It threw me for a loop.
Mm.
I you know, I, but what really hit me was when I returned to my office in New York. I was in Kentucky for his funeral. Returned to New York, went back to my office. About a week later, um, I was handed my mail, and on the top of the stack, I looked at the handwriting, and my heart stopped. It was a letter from my father
Wow.
that he had mailed before his death, obviously, but there it was. And something about this, I didn't call it synchronicity, but something
Mm.
about the kind of auspiciousness of it,
Mm-hmm.
struck me. And I opened it up, and it was a letter from him, and he didn't know he was dying, but on a soul level, perhaps. But it was a letter from him telling me how much he loved me, how proud he was of me, um, that, oh, he had just sold a business of his and was going to travel around the world and wanted to start living. And he said to me, I hope you'll really live, just live your life. And I read that letter, and it
Wow.
was after that moment, I started to have this voice in me, say, is this all there is? Is this all
Mm.
you want? And it put me in touch with what I felt was like a spiritual desert inside of me
Mm.
that I wasn't paying attention to because I was living the high life.
Exactly. Fifth Avenue, baby.
Oh, yeah. Um, so I started listening to that voice, and I could feel the weight in my chest. I could feel the weight of the heaviness of, is that all there is? Is this
Mm.
all there is? And I had not had a long-term relationship, no family, no life. When you're in that business, you have no life.
That is your
Um,
life.
right. So that to me, I think, was the turning point where I
Mm-hmm.
started to listen to this and question and ask. And then a series of things happened. I was going to get married to someone in the business, and we, as friends, ended that because he was very much involved, and I was feeling like it's time for me to start rolling my way out of it.
Yeah.
But um, I took off and went around the world, traveled, did all these things that, my dad, oh gosh, yeah, he was about to do
I
and
just,
didn't do.
wow.
And I didn't connect those, but I was like, well, what have I not done in my life? I traveled for work extensively, but I had not done any really adventurous travel.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I took off and did that for a couple of years. I came back. It's like, okay, now what? And next, my a man that I married came into my life, my child came into my life, and that became my next career. Like that was my whole next life.
Oh,
My
wow.
travel, I felt like that was my third life.
Hmm.
But it was when my son was around 3 years old or 4 years old, where he was busy going, he had his friends and play dates and preschool and all these things. I started to hear that voice again, and it was like, okay, now what? Now what? And I remember I went to a Starbucks coffee shop and I started writing, now what? Now what? Now what? And I wrote everything I had accomplished in my life to date, everything I had done, and there was the big now what. And um, about a week and a half later or so, 2 weeks later, I had this remarkable experience in my son's room, and that it answered the now what completely.
Really?
Because well, the experience showed me what my perception abilities were. And to be able,
Mm.
because what was in my son's room was a young boy who had died on the land underneath the house. He lived there. He came in. He had passed, but not completely.
Hmm.
I had no idea of any of this. I can speak to it now because I know. At the time, I wasn't entirely sure what I was doing, but it was so profound, um, and it felt so natural to have this um, spirit being in the room with me, talking to me, telling me their story, as if I was hearing it in my head, a quiet little story. But then it got really intense and dramatic, and I, you know, by some stroke of I don't know what. Um, I chose not to think I was crazy, which I would
Hmm.
have
Thank
before.
God. Hmm.
I chose to, because it felt so natural. It was like, oh, I know this. Um, and I went through this process with this spirit, and at the end of it, this gorgeous light came in through. This light came in through my son's bedroom window that encased him, this little spirit, and he this one I can't say without tears coming to my eyes. He had been gripping a teddy bear. Like I saw this vision of this boy gripping a teddy bear. And when the light came in, he walked up to me. He handed me the teddy bear. I know. I at the time I was in a completely neutral state. There were no
Huh.
tears, there was no emotion. It was only
Uh-huh.
after the fact. It was very just, oh, it's a gift. He's handing me a gift.
Mhm.
And then he went, I saw him. I said out loud, step in the light. Never said those words in my life before.
Mm.
And then he left.
Wow.
And even though I had been feeling his presence and not really knowing what it was for several nights, that night he was gone. He didn't show up. He was gone.
Mhm.
But I felt like that teddy bear somehow was symbolic of saying, here, Shawna, you're ready.
Yeah.
You're ready to step into this.
Oh my gosh.
And it just felt so natural. And at the end, my body started shuddering,
Mhm.
um, like really shuddering, the power and the force, like windows would shudder.
Mm.
It was, and I just there was a part of me that was just sitting there kind of observing what was happening to my body. And then I went into this deep calm, followed by this expansive feeling of bliss. That's the only way I can describe it. And I took a breath and I opened my eyes and I went, oh, time to go pick up my son at preschool. I better get going. Like literally, it's like, oh,
Like step off the stage. Like it was just the next thing to do.
yeah, it was. And then found I had made a friend in Boulder. We were only there a couple of years by then, And she was all excited. I whispered the experience to her, and she was all excited. And she said, "Oh, well, you know what this means, don't you?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, you're psychic, you're clairvoyant, you're a channel, Shawna. Don't you know that?" And I was, no, I was, I was a little, okay, I guess. And that was the beginning. And she really was one of two people who um, encouraged me, and I started taking steps. And then I didn't know what to do with this gift. So you don't teach someone to be intuitive. We all are. We have the gift. We have it comes as part of our hardware. And when we come into this life, it's with us. Um, but it's good to have teachers help you understand what's happening and
Mhm.
how to be proactive with it rather than have that gift, which I've seen before with people, where the gift it opens you up to so much, this multidimensional kaleidoscopic world, but it can feel chaotic at times. It can feel too much, overwhelming. For empaths, you can get flooded with all this information.
Mhm.
And so I was grateful for my teachers that I've sought out, and they helped me learn how to harness this, how to hone it, what it means, what to do with it. And then I kind of took flight. And I had the friend that I mentioned. I'll say her name, Laura, and she was a huge help to me. Um, the thing is, she sent me names, just first names of people that she knew around the country because she was a public speaker at the time and she had a diverse network. But I didn't know them, but she knew them. So she would ask them, "Oh, my friend is exploring this part of herself. Do you mind if she reads you? All I need is your yes." And so she would send me first names via email. And I
Huh.
didn't really, I just knew that I needed to quiet my inner system down,
Mhm.
quiet down, um, bring my nervous system into a calmer place.
Yeah.
And then I would, in that meditative space, then I would just ask, "What do I need to know about so and so?" And I had a person that gave, and all these stories started to come out in front of me. I'd hear voices, I could smell things, I would see like little visual images going across my screen.
Mhm.
Um, I would share it back with my friend via email, and she would send it on to the person. And it was kind of a little, at times, surprisingly so alarming, a little how accurate what I was seeing was.
Mhm.
And so that snowballed. And I was just doing this. Here's the funny thing. So I was doing this after my son went off to preschool. I would go home. My husband was at work. I'd go home to my bed, sit on my bed with my legs crossed, do my all my energy clearing work that I had been taught, and go into my meditative space. And then I'd put my headphones on, and I had people calling and asking, "Oh, I've heard about you. Would you do a reading for me? Would you just tell me what you see? Or I lost somebody. Would you mind just?" And I was just doing this.
Oh.
It never occurred to me to ask compensation or to do anything
Mhm.
like that. And but people started asking, I cannot, it's so helpful that I cannot give you something. And then again, I grew to understand the law of even exchange and how that
Mhm.
was important. You give a
Mhm.
gift, you get a gift. That's critical. So I did. And then it snowballed from there. I, and here I am now.
Oh my God, I
So
love the
that's,
bootstrapping nature of it. How your friend saw this in you after that experience
hmm
in your son's
yeah,
room
yeah.
and just go ahead.
Yeah, no, she was a gift. And
Yeah.
then, and her mother, who was very resistant to all of this
Uh-huh.
kind of way of seeing the world, um, she finally broke her mother down, and her mother said, "Oh, okay," because she had just lost her husband,
Oh.
and her husband came to me, and I communicated, and it was very helpful for her. And then she called all her friends, and so
Oh, wow.
that's how it snowballed from there. And then everything has been word of mouth. since then.
Amazing. And how long ago was this? 20 years?
About that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here you are in this um, movie industry, something, that voice that you were talking about that was coming up, that was kind of calling you forth. And then this piece around your dad, super powerful, how you ended up doing all the traveling. That was chapter 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then this just emerged. But did you have access to this as a kid? Did you know that you had the ability? I mean, it sounds like you've never talked with spirits or people who had died, but now you're shaking your head.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can only answer that being here now and looking
Yeah.
back, because not at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was not going to my mom and saying, "Oh, mom, I see this angel over here, and the angel's telling us, blah, blah, blah," and, and have my mom, no, that would, that would not go over very well.
Right.
So, but I did, um, looking back, I knew that I had at the time, and I remember kind of stepping inside that younger person's experience, me, and I remember feeling what she felt back then, which
Oh.
was, there's something here. I'm seeing one thing and people are doing something over here. They're actually moving through their day doing this. Oh, so and so's out in the yard. This person's, talking to that person. And I'm over here watching this and I'm going, oh, I'm seeing what they're not talking about. I'm feeling in between the lines. The way I experienced it a lot though was isolating though, because I felt like I was on the outside, like they didn't see me, like a
Mm.
fly on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
I felt often like I was the fly on the wall, observing everything going on and seeing something that they weren't talking about. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, well, if I can see it, why can't they see it? Do
Yeah.
they not get it? But it never ever occurred to me that that was some sort of extrasensory ability.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and nobody talked about that. It was a small town in Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
very Catholic town, and you listened to your priest, and that's what you did.
Right. You didn't have household
Yeah.
conversations about talking to spirits or seeing angels in the corner.
No, no, not at all. Not at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, I will say, just one more thing. I
yeah.
will say, as I got older, um, when I was in the film business, I'd be sitting in a meeting with all these people, and there's one consciousness voice going on saying, that person's not really telling us the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And then this other voice in me is like talking strategy,
Uh-huh.
you know.
I
So
love it.
I was aware of that, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what I was supposed to do with it. It
Mm-hmm.
didn't, it was just like, oh, you don't speak up and say that, they're not interested.
Right. Yeah. It's
So
going to ruffle some feathers.
yeah. Mm,
Yeah. That's a lot to hold, to be able to actually have multiple realities being
yeah.
presented at one time in your psyche. I would imagine your brain has had to develop in a certain way to be
Yeah.
able to have all
It's
that happening at the same time.
it can be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I see younger people who are very empathic, and they don't know how to speak or articulate what's going on with them, I can see the overwhelm, the stress of all these sensory input that they're
Yeah.
getting, and they don't know what to do with it,
Exactly.
and then it
Yeah.
can be very difficult.
Yeah. Right.
And helping them kind of flip that and say, oh, don't be dictated by it. You become proactive with it.
Mm.
And see, yeah, that's what I was able to do. And it made all the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's really good for anyone who's listening right now, because I think so many of us are empaths and we don't know what to do with all the information that comes in
Hmm.
until something happens where we're forced to figure it out, or we have a mentor or a guide. So I'm
Hmm.
appreciating that you're naming that.
Hmm.
Um, great. So I love hearing about your journey. I think where I'd like to go next is, let's just set some framework around intuition, because you said something really interesting. You said we're all intuitive. It's part of our heart. We're hardwired. And so let's talk about basically what does it mean to be intuitive and what gets in the way of being intuitive. So you can just kind of
Mm.
take that wherever you want to go.
Yeah. Mm, what it means to be intuitive is first and foremost, it means that you have the capacity, we all do, to have live with two states of consciousness side by side. So I think of there's the ego personality self out busy doing my day.
Mm-hmm.
But meanwhile, while I'm doing that, there's this inner voice, there's this higher self, there's this higher self that is connected to higher consciousness, that sees it, has a deep relationship with it, brings it back down into this body, and it sits there and it's just waiting for you to ask a question. It's just like, I'm here, will you see me, notice me? And you know but that we all have that capacity, all of us. We have the capacity to walk around with those two states of consciousness side by side, hand in hand, going, let's go live life.
Mm-hmm.
And it that's what gives the multidimensionality to life
Mm-hmm.
as I experience it. It lets us see the bigger picture view. It tells us, oh, there's more going on here besides this person yelling at you right now. They are in pain. You're in pain. We're all in pain. But what can we do to help each other? Can we, or this is the vision I always see. It's like I'm running down the street. I'm really busy. I'm trying to get to this meeting, and I'm passing this other person is moving toward me, and it's my higher self. She's there,
Uh-huh.
and she's going, and I'm moving by, and I don't even notice her. And she whispers just as I'm passing by. She reaches my ear and she says, "Oh, I have something to want to tell you." And I'm like, "What?" And then and it's like, "Oh yeah, okay. Um, later. I'll check in with you later." And I keep going.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but what she wanted to say to me could have been very timely,
Yeah.
like important for that moment,
Mm-hmm.
because maybe she wanted to tell me something about where I was going,
Right.
or to slow down because I might trip over the side of the step or something.
Yeah.
But it could have been timely.
Yeah.
And the benefit of stopping and listening and taking the few minutes to just stop, check in, and listen. Well, the biggest benefit is you form this loving bond with this person who's got a perception and a perspective that you might not in your personality ego self have
Yeah.
not see it. It could be your blind spot, but
Mm-hmm.
in a practical sense, it's like, wow, there might be some good information that can keep me from circling the block again and again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the biggest frustrations I hear from clients is, I thought I learned that. Why am I circling this block again? Why am I circling this again and again and again? Well, when you start to form that loving bond and you stop and listen, you will learn why you circled it.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe you'll circle it one or two more times. But each time you're getting more information and then you're done. And then you say, oh, got it. Okay, thanks. I can move on. So you save a lot of time.
Yeah.
You can save yourself frustration. Um, you can make more aligned choices so that things flow more easily in your life. You can use it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that's how I perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People think of it as the psychic self or the clairvoyant self. I, yes, it could be, but I think it's more the relationship between you and yourself. And are you going to have a loving relationship, one that listens, you listen to each other, you form that bond, or is it going to be a contentious one? Are you going to fight? Are you going to be unkind to yourself and frustrated? Well, I know which one I choose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I like that you're framing it this way, that it's really two aspects of self. there's the ego and personality, and then there's what we could call our higher self or higher
Spirit.
intelligence, spirit. And that if we're not moving at a certain pace or practicing a certain level of listening, we may go through our whole life missing this part of us.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's painful actually to just recognize the truth
Well,
of that.
that's when people who are dying, they're hungry.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, was it a good life?
Yeah.
What, oh, I spent so much time doing this when meanwhile my relationship with this person was becoming more distant. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's painful.
Yeah.
It's difficult to live with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we could just build this out a little bit more of how would one, given that we live in a culture that is constantly driving us to do and seek externally and prove ourselves, there's
Mm-hmm.
a certain warp speed that has
Yeah.
become an addictive, normalized pace.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is your guidance for us around how do you cultivate more space for this other part, to get to know this other part of
Mm-hmm.
self?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, making space is something that has to come from the heart. Making
Mm.
time is a logistical thing, you
Uh-huh.
know, but making space for it means, okay, I'm feeling this ache in my heart, and how long am I going to live with that? So, and that, people will, almost everybody can feel that, you know, and I don't know, yes, our world is so noisy, so noisy out there. Um, And the more we listen to that, the more distant we become from
Mm-hmm.
this inner self, the heart connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be willing to stop for a minute and say, okay, my head is driving me crazy. All the thoughts running around, all I'm getting, like a flag flapping in the wind. Well, there has to be a moment when something says, ah, I'm tired and I want to feel. And then when you want to feel something, you want to be in your heart. You're saying, I want to go to my heart. I want to,
Mm-hmm.
and your body may tell you this. You could get chronically sick.
Yeah.
You could get really ill, and your body is messaging you very loud and clear. You've separated from that.
Mm-hmm.
So there, making the time, that's, I don't, that goes into looking at your schedule, being disciplined, being committed to you, being committed to improving some aspects of your life that you're not happy with, wanting to know that, I can change that, I can create that. That's all a mindset thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's, there are plenty of coaches out there, right? But it still comes down to you to have to say, this is important.
Exactly.
This is important to me. This matters to me. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm doing. I don't know if I can keep up with it. I don't know, but I know what matters, that this matters. And you have to keep reminding yourself of that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Uh, it is, once though you get a taste of it, I will say that once you give yourself a chance and just however you get into a meditative space, whether it's practice of meditation, going on a run, you get in a zone,
Mm-hmm.
um, through yoga. There's lots of entries, doorways in. But I will say, once you get a taste of it, it is really hard to turn your back on it after that. It will be very hard to turn your back on it. You might go away and come back and go away for a little longer and come back. But it's
Mm-hmm.
once you hear that voice, once your body experiences that connection, once your heart opens to that connection, I dare you to walk away from it forever.
Uh-huh.
You just can't.
Yeah.
So it just takes one or two tries, to get you underway with it.
Yeah, it feels like there's really a couple of layers. There's that first passage as a human being
Mhm.
to either be provoked to look at this because there's so much pain and it doesn't feel like there's
Mhm.
another choice, or
Mhm.
there's just some part of us is surrendered to hearing the call. But there is a certain level of discipline. I will say that having been exploring this for a couple of decades now, including my first
Mhm.
foray into meditation, it was the last thing I wanted to do. And then when I would do it, I would realize, oh God, I'm so glad I did it. And then I would go in these like hiatuses from it where I wouldn't do it anymore. And life was completely different. And wasn't that long ago actually for me where I've been so diligent in the last couple of years. But there was a period I'm trying to think of. Yeah, over the summer, I'm very much into breath work, and I have a lot of different things, practices I do in the morning for my nervous system. But I got away from it. I finished this 120-day practice and I got away from it. And I think I finished in July, and by September, I was like, why am I anxious all the time? Like, this isn't me. What is going on? And so I knew that I needed to reinstitute, because I was like, I'd get up in the morning and I'd be like, I'm just going to take Angel for a walk. And I wouldn't go get on my cushion and I wouldn't do my practices. And I was actually disconnected from that voice, disconnected from I was more in, I will say this, I felt like I was circulating in this bubble of anxiety and kind of like vigilance. And that's not actually who we are. And so I had to reinstitute a practice, which I'm in the middle of, just a 90-day one. And within like 2 days, everything is clear again. Like I hear the voices. Even if I don't have clarity, I'm in a practice of prayer every day. Show me how to find more clarity on this. And so I guess I'm bringing that up because it's so easy. The two things I was hearing is that initial call and the discipline required, even when we don't want to do it, is such a mysterious thing and such an important thing to find the discipline. And then it's that gentleness of recognizing that this is a lifelong relationship. We're talking about making our primary relationship, our heart intelligence, spirit, God, our higher self, whatever. And what's more important than that? But why it's
Wonderful.
so hard to do.
Yeah, and can I ask you, so when you were being disciplined,
Mm-hmm.
when you had that feeling of, okay, or it slips from your mind, what brought you back? Was it a thought? Did you feel something in your body? Did you have a
Mm.
conversation with the resistance? What do you know? Can you
Yeah.
identify what that was?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think it's been a couple of different things, but one thing that I'm very competitive with myself. And so I use Insight Timer, and I will like
Mhm.
use it for my daily practice, and it starts over when you miss. And I hate that. Like I'll get to 40 days and if I miss a day it starts over, and I just like cannot stand that. So I sometimes I will reinstitute that practice. And to your point, I I this time I felt it in my body, the anxiety that didn't feel like me, that was like the trigger of, oh, this isn't bullshit. Like I need to tend my garden because this is the state of mind and the frequency that I will be gravitating towards if I don't. And so that time it pushed me back in because I felt it in the
Mhm.
body and I felt it in my mind.
Yeah. Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't use that. I wouldn't say that if you're a nasty taskmaster to yourself and,
Yeah. No.
forcing yourself. But that comes up frequently. You know, when I ask people, do you have a meditation practice?
Mhm.
What do you do right now? And they say, yes, but I don't really like to meditate, or I can't do that mantra thing, or nothing works. And, um, as you said, it's natural for us to want to be in that place because
Mhm.
that's where our body is at its um, highest form of equilibrium and connection, right? But my experience had been, um, okay, all the resistance, I had to uh, say to myself, what's the resistance about?
Mm.
and tune in. Like,
I love
what am
this.
I feeling is the resistance.
Mhm.
And one time that's when I got in touch with this little, very, very, very pissed off kid inside of
Uh-huh.
me. And she said, it's just hard work. I don't want to do hard work. And, and so, that's where you can use inner child work. You just go in
Yes.
and you say to that child, you don't have to do the hard work. I like doing it. It makes me feel good. You don't have to. You can just go play. In fact, we'll both go play. I'm going to go play doing my meditation, and you can just go
Mm,
play whatever you want to do.
mhm.
You kind of have to face and know what the resistance is. And sometimes, quite honestly, when I feel resistance, no matter what it is I'm trying to do and be disciplined about, um, I will go. You have to use the energy practices, but I will see resistance as it's this energy ball in me, and it's,
Mm,
doing this, it wants to fight with me. And I will just identify it and gently just say, I don't need to hold that. I don't need to hold that, and just release the energy of it. I might feel it in my chest right here. I might feel it in my belly, but I will just sit and knowingly release the energy down a grounding cord, or put it in a helium balloon and send it away.
mhm.
And something will shift, because I see that as me having seniority over that energy. That energy
Yes.
doesn't dictate to me. It will be there. I can look at it in a loving way, probably had a reason for being there at some point. Um, but I say, no, I am senior to that.
Mhm.
And I can move my own energy. I can release energy that isn't mine. I can release energy that might be mine, but has no beneficial effect to me or use to me. When we know we have that kind of proactive ability to shift our field, our energy, so that'll shift something for me. And it's like, oh, okay. And then I have less resistance. And then sometimes it's just like that rebellious kid is going, no, I'm not going there. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to the gym. I'm not going to go talk to that person who I really don't want to talk to. And then the higher self in me says, it's okay. I'll take care of her. You
Mm,
go do it. I'll take care of her. And it's just like, no, I'm going. I'm
yeah,
going. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go take care of it.
that feels like such deep integration right there between the two parts, where you're
Hmm.
actually able to not get snagged by the resistance and feel the other voice go, no, we've got it,
Hmm.
and let that
Hmm.
carry you. So,
But if you don't know you've got that higher voice in there that
exactly.
can do that, then you're not very well resourced, right?
Agreed. And you're just following the whims of these parts that are protecting themselves.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I want to bookmark that maybe we do another show at some point and we could actually talk about what you just said, because there's
Hmm.
ways to psychologically break things down and move them. And then there's also ways to just energetically move the
Hmm.
resistance. So I'd like to
Hmm.
bookmark that, because that feels like
Yeah.
a really cool thing to be able to give people practices
Uh-huh.
around that.
Hmm.
But, and there's so much more I want to say, but I really want to get to this sort of juicier, well, not juicier because it's juicy, but it is juicier. Um, why is intuition so important with what's happening in the world right now? Why put our attention on building this relationship?
That's a great question just to put out there,
Mm-hmm.
because when you posed it to me, I was like, what else is there? Because the reason, to answer your question from my perspective,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I'm not saying anything that hasn't been channeled for years now, broadcasted to us by everybody who's in the world of spiritual work. Um, even our things are falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for the structures to be torn down. We may not like who's doing it and how it's being done, but I always take when I get, caught up in the headlines, which just not looking at these days. Um, I go to the higher perspective and I say, okay, what is going on here? And that's where my intuition helps. That's why you come to this place where you can take the higher, get up 35,000 feet and look down and go, oh, well, things are falling apart. Things are being, it's like going in and gutting a house so that you can remodel it. Well, a lot of people get hurt. Things, I mean, it's not something that's said lightly. You know, people are going to be in pain from this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People's lives are going to be changed. But to me, I see it as divine order, that they're no longer serving us. You know, there's ways in which these institutions and the people and the things and the places, you know, we've leaned on have been, see it coming from it's been the third, I don't know, other people talk about it, different dimensions, but I see
Mm-hmm.
it simply as we've been too focused on the third chakra, the power and the abuse of the power. There's been abuse of the power, abuse of control, not caring anymore. The heart has been stripped away from this picture. Okay, that is not good for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so to come to your question, it's it's not an option in my mind anymore to not focus on your inner connection with yourself, which is that what I said, those two states of that higher self. Um, you know, people talking about intuition and, oh, you know, my gut is saying I should do this and that. You know, people have handled it. Some people have taken it quite seriously, but some people use it to leverage it. Some people, it's kind of, you know, empty talk. But no more. The reason it's not an option is because there's chaos happening. So
Yeah.
when all the structure comes down, you can see it. Just look around. There's chaos,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to see a whole lot more of it. So what do you trust? Where are you going? To your best friend, your family, you know, who are you going to go to? And the safest place that is never going to lie to you, never going to lead you astray, it's the most grounded place you can go, is that connection with the self that knows that it's connected to the infinite state of love and connectedness. That self will always speak in that language. It will also help you know what is true for you. Like, if I make this choice to engage in this or that, or with a person, is this going to take me away from myself or bring me closer to myself? And that inner voice is the truest one that will speak to you. You'll get advice from other people and friends,
Right.
everything outside of you. But the thing is, the world change. There's change. You can only count on one thing. Change is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only thing that doesn't change is that eternal voice that has your best interest. It has the highest good interest, not just yours, but it will, if it's in your highest good, it will align with the highest good around you, of all of us. It doesn't mean that it's going to come easily, or the change will come easy, or it won't have struggle, but it will bring you back around to what's in your highest good. So I see that internally happening for all of us and externally. It's anybody's guess as to what will happen out there, but it's nobody's guessing. I'm not guessing. There's no guesswork when it comes in here.
Yeah.
So
And that's
we
really, go ahead.
critical. Well, there's another reason. There's
Yeah.
that love it. You form the loving bond with yourself, which no one can break. Only you can break it. You're in control. The other reason is that when you form that loving bond with yourself, you act in accordance with love. It softens us. It helps us see what are the nuances. It helps us see humanity because we're seeing ourselves as love. When we sit in that truth and we experience it and our heart expands, what are we doing? we're, we're sending that out and we're helping. That's help. That's why so many of us who work in spiritual work or coaching or helping people, that um, it feels really good to do it. It's like, I want to help. I want to be of some help.
Mhm.
So that you're helping, you're going to be the instrument. You're going to join the people who are the instruments of change, who will help. They're going to be the ones building up as everything's coming down.
Mhm.
And so, well, love is the only connector. It's the only glue that we have that's works, that lasts. And
Yeah.
I'm not the only one. I'm sure you've heard many messages, um, channelers, everything comes down to love. All I don't care who you're talking to, whether you're talking to a priest, a spiritual channeler, your neighbor, everyone is speaking about love now, more and more and more. So I would rather be an instrument of love than get too caught up in what's coming down, what's being destroyed and
Mm.
torn down. So
And it's
that's
a choice point.
two important reasons to form this bond with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
this loving
Yeah.
kindness.
Yeah. And if anyone out there is messy like me, there are gauntlets to walk to get to where you're talking about. And what I mean by that, and maybe we could name some of them, it's just
Mhm.
in order to come into this frequency of love, to recognize it towards the parts of ourselves, that's where it really begins. From my perspective, it's like the more that I'm able to meet these wounded parts of self, personality, ego, the softer I am with everything outside of me.
Mhm.
And yet there are some snags that are
Mhm.
collective and they're normalized. And when we spoke briefly, talking about what we were going to bring up today, I wrote this down because I loved this language. You said, we need to be aware of the secret weapon of being productive.
Mhm.
Because if we learn how to settle into ourselves and feel proud of what we've accomplished, we are in a different mind stream than this. We need to fix ourselves. There's something broken. And
Mhm.
basically, that being productive, improving ourselves rather than resting back and quieting down to find this voice you're speaking to.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Good
I
point.
wonder if you want to add anything that we should be tracking that are these subtle, like I call them, like they're forms of domestication, all genders, non-gender.
Mhm.
It's a mind stream that can interfere with one, being kind to ourselves. And so are there other main themes that you would just want to name with me around, you know, things to be looking for that are not our allies?
The first one that comes to mind is being numb.
Ooh,
When we start to feel numb,
what does
like
that
it's
look
too
like?
much. Well, this is all too much. I'm powerless.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing I can really do. I don't like what's happening, or I don't feel good about this or that, but I feel powerless. And so when we feel powerless, we are going into I see it as a numbness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, one of the things to look out for. Some people start to describe that as depression.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just where we have taken all of our vitality and our desire to create and to know that we can create, and because we can. But that sense of, um, what can I do? I see it as this energy that kind of collapses in on itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is it numbs our ability, or it actually, I should say, overshadows that knowledge that sits within us that says, I can create my reality. I can create what happens. I can create my reality. And it just may mean I can create my reality here today. I can choose to seek pleasure and joy and look up at a stranger and smile,
Mhm.
you know, but I see numbness as one of them that, you know, I do hear people talk. This is not to dismiss the severity of depression or a clinical depression, but some people can just feel like it's all too much and they become numb. And then their frequency drops, that vitality, the frequency around vitality, because we have this ability to just raise our frequency really high in a state of creation and
Mhm.
love, and then we also have the capacity to drop it back down. But when we feel suppressed, then it's really low. Then
Yeah.
our all of our energy field just drops down and it's low, and then people can't be, they feel nothing matters.
Mhm.
um, uh, the other thing to look out for, well, you've spoken to, I think, some of the ones that are really prevalent. Um, but the other thing I think to look out for that drives us away from ourselves is it's falling prey to, well, what people say, the fear mongering.
Mhm.
You know, um, it's falling prey to, well, if I'm not connected to myself, which when we aren't, then somebody with the loudest voice is going to get our attention, you know. And right now, a lot of this, you know, fearing the other, what's different from us, is getting a very loud microphone right now, has a very
Yeah.
big voice and a big microphone right now. Um, and so when that creates fear, when we feel fearful, that's one to look out for, because that fear obviously is going to drive us to the loudest voice. And if we don't have a connection to ourselves, then the fear eclipses everything.
Yeah.
And then we start doing things in our lives, hoarding, pushing people away, you know, falling into the emotional abyss of, um, I don't want to be here. These other people are controlling me. You know, it's just kind of a big
Mhm.
mess. It's
Yeah.
messy.
It is very messy.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
It feels like there's so much more we could say, and we only have a few more minutes, which is amazing to me how fast this flies. Um, but I think it's really important what you just said about the numbing. And I want to just tag this tiny piece on because it was just a couple weeks ago where I had a full day of clients, and I had maybe 4 of the 6 clients were really in a hard place about what was happening in the world and thinking they needed to leave the country. And there was just a lot of fear. And I got off the work that day, and I was just in the first time in a long time, I felt that numbness and I felt this overwhelm of, I don't know how well informed I should be right now, because there's so much information out there. I don't even know what to trust. I don't know who's behind the information. And I can feel this, and I wonder if other people feel this too, just this pull between, I want to be informed, I want to be advocating for the things that are important to me, but I also don't want to be so consumed by it that I'm dropping away from myself because I'm getting in this fearful place of spinning, I guess is what I could say. And what
Mhm.
I came to was, which is actually a funny thing, my mind fights this a little bit, but what I came to was, the most important thing I can do is work on my relationship with myself and my nervous system right now, and this voice that you're speaking to. Because from there, I will have a greater sense of discerning when to take action, what to listen to, what rings as true and what rings as some kind of propaganda. And yet my mind wants a different kind of solution. But that's really what it comes down to, is it's moment to moment, which is why I feel, to your point, it's more important than ever to be building this relationship with ourselves and knowing what that voice is and discerning it from voices of contraction or fear or protection, which are all totally valid as part of being human. But to discern that and build a relationship and a commitment to that every day so that we have greater discernment.
Yeah. And something 100%, I agree with you. And that's what I do too.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what I do too. And I will say one of the fun things
Mm-hmm.
about forming that relationship is that you are turning on that capacity to read something, to
Yes.
read what's going on. And what's fun is if you're a person who likes to be out in the front and advocating and front facing with that, what's fun is that if you really connect with your intuition and you learn to read things, you can scan for, okay, what this person is saying we must do. You can scan for the universal truth of it. And there's a technique to do that. And then, because if you're really somebody who wants to get out there and be on the front lines,
Mm-hmm.
great, if
Yeah.
that's what you feel called to. But what are you listening? What are you believing? You know,
Mm-hmm.
like you, to your point, I mean, there's so many non-truths being spread all over the internet and media and everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know what's true? Well, you can scan for the universal truth of something.
Yeah. It's a frequency.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were going to say something else.
No, that's just one of the benefits. That's the
Yeah. It's
one
like,
of the benefits of connecting to yourself. It's like, oh, I can see that and read that and trust it.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Before we started our conversation today, we had a few moments together and we were kind of in a quiet space. And you brought through these very beautiful words, which I want to read. I feel like
Mhm.
such a beautiful message. And as I read it, if anything else comes up, feel free to share. And
Mhm.
then I want to read one more thing from the Hopi elder, Chief Eagle. And then I'd love to just talk to you, give you a few minutes to share about who you love to work with. So
Mhm.
that's the next few layers. So I tried to write really quickly as you were channeling this, and I may not have gotten this totally accurate, but here we go. The human body is temporary. If we become too entangled with resistance, fight, flight, we will prolong its suffering. But if together we join hands, we can lift the suffering and move everyone without exception. And then you said it again, without exception, to love.
Mhm. Yeah. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to others. Communication is connection,
Mm,
and connection is healing, and healing is love.
mm,
Everything always comes back to that word. And even though sometimes it rings hollow, or we've heard it 100,000 times and nobody pays attention anymore,
mm-hmm.
when you have that connection with yourself, a loving connection, you know why it's meant, why it keeps coming up over and over again.
Yeah, beautiful. So I'm going to read this one piece and then I want to hear who
Beautiful.
you work with. This is from a Hopi Indian leader called White Eagle. He says, "This moment that mankind is experiencing now can be seen either as either as a door or a hole. The decision to fall in the hole or go through the door is yours. If you absorb information 24 hours a day with negative energy, constantly nervous and pessimistic, you will fall into the hole. But if you take the opportunity to look at yourself, use the time to rethink life and death, to care for yourself and to care for others, you are walking through the portal. Keep your home, keep your body safe. Connect with your spiritual home. When you take care of yourself, you take care of everyone else. Don't underestimate the spiritual dimension of this crisis. Take the perspective of an eagle that sees everything from above with a broader perspective. There is a social issue in this crisis, but it's also a spiritual issue. They go both hand in hand. Without the social dimension, we fall into bigotry. Without the spiritual dimension, we perish in pessimism and meaninglessness. You're ready to pass the crisis. Pack your toolkit and use all the tools at your disposal. Learn the resistance from the example of the Indian and African people. We are and still are being threatened, extinct, but we never stopped singing, dancing, building bonfires, and having joy. Don't feel guilty for feeling happy in these difficult times. It doesn't help at all to be sad or angry. Resistance is resistance through joy. You have every right to be strong and positive. And there's no other way to do this than by adopting a beautiful, cheerful, and empathetic attitude. This has nothing to do with alienation, ignorance of the world. It's a resistance strategy. When we enter the door, we are given a new worldview because we have faced our fears and overcome adversity. That's all you can do now. Seek solace in the storm. Keep calm. Pray daily. Make it a habit to meet the holy everywhere, every day. Show resistance through art, joy, trust, and love. Chief White Eagle.
Well, I don't think anything else has to be said. That was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Between that and what you brought through, it feels like
speaks to
such a clear
everything.
message. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I have nothing more to add.
Well, I would love to hear as we're closing. And by the way, I'll have your website in the show notes and a deeper bio about you for people that want to learn more. But tell us who you really love to work with.
Oh, thank you for that. It's a little hard to talk about that after what you just read
Yeah.
was so beautiful. But just quickly, I work with a lot of people in different kinds of settings for different reasons, and I love all of it. But simply because I come from this strong marketing strategic mm, background
Mm-hmm.
and business. I love the women entrepreneurs that
Mm-hmm.
I work with because I can speak their language in their everyday world. I understand what they're up against. I understand what they're trying to do. Um, there's something about an entrepreneurial spirit that just is unlike anything else in business. So they're very self-motivated. So women who come to me and want to work on their business, we end up also looking at what is unaligned with them because that's impacting their business. And, a business that you created, that business is a living, breathing entity that wants to talk to you and it wants to be in harmony with you. And so I get to, in the everyday, real pragmatic pieces that they're dealing with, I understand them and it's kind of fun. I love strategy. Um, and we take what it comes through in their session, and we get to roll up our sleeves and strategize and say, let's get going, use the
Mm-hmm.
information. So that's just fun. It's my own personal kind of joy, fun doing that. But I love everybody who comes. I
Mm-hmm.
love what they're looking at. I love the gift and the privilege to be able to see their spirit and have their spirit talk to me as well as their human ego self.
Mm-hmm.
And that I feel like that's a privilege to be able to have that capacity to do that. So,
Yeah. Beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I would say in closing that anyone who's drawn to being brought through, you know how earlier you said you kind of read the energy and you bring a consciousness in, and then people do the reconfiguration themselves.
Hmm. Hmm.
You have given me a shit sandwich many times where I was like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. But it's been like the best thing. And I have, of course, dear friends that come to you, and I've had a few of them like, that was a really fucking hard session. But that's the beauty of how clear you are, is you just bring through what's coming through. And then it's up to us to figure out what we want to do with it. But I guess I just want to plug this for anyone out there that's listening that would really love kind of a laser opening into seeing what they can't see. I really feel like that's one of your greatest gifts. I mean, you do it all with great love, but it's like, it's fierce. You're fierce. You're fiercely loving. And oftentimes that means revealing things that are hard to see, but ultimately in the grand scheme of evolving, it's like we couldn't do it without it. So thank you for
Wow.
all that you're
Thank you.
doing.
Appreciate that.
I'm so
Thank you.
grateful to have had this time with you. Anything else you want to say as we close?
I am so grateful to you. I mean,
Mm,
what you've articulated in this time, what you've brought forth, the questions you've asked, they come deeply from your wisdom. And so even though we all are messy, myself included, and you may feel that you're really messy sometimes, your wisdom and beauty always shows up.
mm,
It always comes through. And I just appreciate that you did that today and shared it with all of
mm,
us. And thank you.
Thank you, Shawna. I hope you'll come back so we can do some practical pieces in the future.
I'd love to. I'd love
Uh,
to.
okay. See you
All
next
right.
time. Thanks for being
Thank you,
here.
Anne Marie. Okay. Bye.
Bye.